Welcome to the SharePoint Patterns and Practices webcast, and this time we're going to talk about the reusable controls which are available for you to take advantage from the PnP initiative, and these are targeted for SharePoint Framework solutions. So this is an open source community-driven effort where we are providing reusable controls for developers and developers who are building these SharePoint Framework solutions. My name is Vesa Juvonen. I'm a senior program manager from SharePoint Engineering, and with me today as let's say the man behind of the initial version of these controls, and also the person who's helping us to coordinate all of these efforts, Elio Struif. So Elio, will you do the quick intro as well?
Hi, I'm Elio Struif from Belgium, an MVP working for Valo Intranet.
Thank you, Elio. I just can't pronounce your last name properly. I'm just sorry for
no
that.
problem.
So, probably I'm not the only person who's having difficult time.
No, indeed. I heard a lot of different pronunciations.
Yes, you should change your name. No, just kidding. Now, let's actually talk about what these controls are and how they benefit the SharePoint Framework developers, and why would people actually care. So let's talk about first of all what's available. So first of all, and there's quite a lot of controls. Well, there's not a massive amount of controls available, but there are controls. There's two kinds of controls. There's controls which are for content controls, and there's controls which are for property panel. So when you're configuring your web part, you're able to use these controls. Let's have a look on some of these controls in practice. So we do have a date picker control, which is rendering quite nicely the Office UI React-based UIs. So it's actually rendering that controls quite nicely in the property pane. We do have a list picker control, which can be configured to support one or multiple lists. So it's again a property setting in the control, how to make that happen. We do have a taxonomy picker, which can be also configured, and there's multiple different settings in all of these controls. But as an example, you can control the taxonomy picker to support as multi-select or a single select when you are selecting a taxonomy from the taxonomy store. And this is a good example of a awesome control which is encapsulating the all complexity behind of accessing good taxonomy terms in the web part. Because you only control the behavior, we will take care of all of the HTTP calls and REST APIs and CSAM APIs, or the communication between the server and the control itself. One highly requested control which many of the first-party web parts are using is the web part title control. Somebody might actually think that this is natively within the web part by default, but that's not actually true. It's just that first-party web parts, pretty much all of them actually have this web part title control. And now that's provided through PnP reusable controls as well. This is no longer a property pane or an editor or property pane control. This is now the content controls which you can use in the web part behavior. We also have a placeholder control. Before we actually went to GA in SharePoint Framework, we actually had this kind of a control available for the developers, but in GA release of SPFX, that control was removed. So now that's provided through these reusable controls. So you can easily configure, just provide the text and icon, and you'll have this nice placeholder control available, getting rendered on the web part. And then we have, for example, a nice list view control, which is using also the Office UI Fabric, obviously behind of the scenes, but it's adding additional abstraction layer against on top of the Office UI Fabric React. And this is just a small set of controls which are available, but I think it's a good set of examples which will be beneficial for the developers. Now, Elio, on this one, so it's an interesting question. Quite often when we actually talk about these controls, then people are asking, well, wait a minute, so are these replacing Office UI Fabric controls and React controls? What's with the deal with the controls? Will you?
No, they are not completely replacing it.
Yes.
They are giving you the benefit of not writing the code for yourself, and everything is already in place, like you said, with the taxonomy picker or the term picker. We already made these HTTP calls for you, so if you start using that control, everything is in place for you. You don't have to do anything anymore. You just place that property picker on your web part, and everything is configured for you. You can build it yourself, of course, but then you need to reinvent the wheel again, because you need to do your calls. So it's actually using Office UI Fabric in the back, but reusing the same controls, but complexity, we already built it in.
Yes. Yeah, so these are kind of adding additional abstraction layer on top of the Office UI Fabric React controls, because Office UI Fabric controls are not aware of SharePoint. These
yes, they are very dumb.
Yes.
In that case.
Yes, so Fabric control, Office UI Fabric is around the styling and the behavior, but it's not aware of where they're being used. And these controls are then adding that SharePoint layer and awareness of the SharePoint on top of those controls. So these will again further increase the productivity of the developers, because you don't have to worry about the HTTP calls as an example, like Ilya mentioned. So and on that one, so if we talk about the benefits, why would we actually use them? So obviously, our intention in the SharePoint engineering is to provide reusable controls for the community. For time being, we are not actually providing or we're not open sourcing the out-of-the-box controls. There's multiple reasons on that one, which we don't want to actually deep dive on this webcast. But what we want to do is to use the PnP and SharePoint PnP as the channels, and this, for example, these controls packages as the channel to provide some of the experiences which are in the first-party controls, first-party web parts. So as an example, the web part title is an awesome example. We want to provide that for third-party developers, meaning customers and ISVs building SharePoint Framework solutions. But since we're not open sourcing the out-of-the-box first-party web part title, we use the PnP controls to actually provide the capability. And you will see more and more us releasing out-of-the-box controls using this open source channel as well in the future. So we are harvesting the out-of-the-box web parts and out-of-the-box behavior and taking some of the controls from there and pushing them out as a reusable control using the PnP channel. Obviously, you should not reinvent the wheel. There's no point for you to, again, implement the web part title again and again and again. This is something which we want to provide for you so you can actually concentrate on a business logic. And you will see more and more controls here, like mentioned, which will hopefully then mean that in the future, you don't have to worry about the UI layer of or rendering of your web part. You can just concentrate on the business logic, what the web part actually does. This no doubt speeds up the development. So because your developers can use these controls super easily. The taxonomy picker, that's a brilliant example, and I think Ilya is going to share that one in the demo section as well. But it's a great example on the fact that you don't have to worry about where the taxonomy number labels are coming. We'll take care of all of that for you. If you would actually implement that taxonomy picker by yourself, that would be a significant investment. But now you can take advantage of that control just by adding a reference to the web part for the control and just reuse that. And these are community driven. So ideas and questions are always welcome, and contributions absolutely are welcome as well. So this is open source community driven set of controls. It does though mean, and let's be super clear on that one, because it's open source, it's not like you can call a Microsoft Premier support and say, hey, this control has a bug, can you fix that? That's not how open source actually works. But we in the SharePoint engineering, we are reviewing these controls and we are providing some of the capabilities within the controls as well. So we kind of take the learnings from the SharePoint engineering and provide them for the community to reuse. And we also make sure that the controls are following up on the best practices on the SharePoint framework side and the implementation side. Anything what you want to add here, Ilya, around this one?
I think you covered everything in that case. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And indeed, again, contributions are welcome. Ideas for new controls are welcome.
Yes.
Debugs, just mention them in our issue list.
Yes, absolutely. Issues getting reported, sure, pull requests are fine. We do understand that many of the people need to concentrate on their day-to-day life and they can't actually contribute on open source, and that's fine as well. But give us ideas. What do you need? What do you need to be successful in the SharePoint framework development? If you have something which you tend to implement in every single web part, you should tell us and we'll actually provide that for you as a reusable control. So we can actually then divide and conquer. We'll provide the reusable things for you to take advantage, and you'll have more time on concentrating on the business logic, which means that everybody will win. Now, we talked about already that there's kind of two sides, so two kind of controls. So there's the property pane controls, and these are for configuring the web part. So whenever you put the web part in edit mode, this is the panel on the right side, which is visible. And we do have a set of controls there. You'll use that by running the npm install command within your SharePoint Framework solution. And in here, we'll do --save, which will add that package to the package.json file. So whenever another developer pulls down the source code, it will actually have the reference to those controls. And the React controls is then a slightly different name. So the React controls are essentially the content controls. And and that's in the PnP scope, and SPFX controls React. Few things maybe to notice here. First of all, we're using the PnP scope, and this is a relatively new thing. So for open source stuff, which we are releasing from the SharePoint engineering and together with community, we will continue using in the future the PnP scope in the npm, because this will then differentiate that, hey, this is an open source community-driven initiative rather than at Microsoft. At Microsoft means that it's actually part of the product deliverables, like the at Microsoft generator SharePoint, which is the YAML generator for SPFX. The second thing maybe to notice here, because people tend to have a tendency on let's say, concentrating on the exact technologies and the different frameworks. So now we have a property pane controls and React controls. Why React? Why is it React controls? So first of all, the property pane controls, you can use them regardless on what framework you use to actually implement your web part. So they will be actually, property pane controls are based on React, because that's the property pane infrastructure in SharePoint Framework is based on React. So even though your actual business logic is implemented using Angular or whatever, you'll be using these controls as such in your web part. Now, the content controls, like the web part title and the list view web part or list view or the placeholder, they are right now in React. And the reason for that one is that we have Office UI Fabric React controls available from Microsoft. So we're using them on top of the as a baseline, and then we increase the abstraction on that. Now, in the future, you might see, and we can't commit on yet on all of these things, but you probably will see then also Angular controls if there's demand, and please let us know, and a few other controls as well. But for now, we started with React, and then maybe in the future there will be Angular. There's interesting JavaScript development happening in many framework sites. It might be that we'll move to the direction where we are completely framework independent with these controls. We'll see. We'll see how it actually goes. I'm rambling on my mind. Sorry, Ilya. Anything you want to add on that one? Why is it React and why is it not React? And where's Angular? Where's Knockout? Where's the other things?
Yes, we already had that question today, I think, in our issue list.
Yeah.
Where there was a question, why did we split things up? And you mentioned it already, because everything is built with React. So first of all, we are inheriting everything from Office UI Fabric, which is built on React by default. Property pane controls will be always rendered in a React context.
Yeah.
The React controls for the content zones, at the moment we choose to use React because we can benefit from Office UI Fabric. If we see an interest in Angular, we can see what we can do, and we can provide a different repository or make them indeed framework independent.
Yes, that's the ultimate vision at some point, but we need to wait a few things to come from the framework side and the implementation side. Now, and on that one, and like Elias mentioned, just to reiterate, the reason why we chose React is just to see if there's demand for these reusable controls, and it's good that somebody is already commenting in the issue list and asking why isn't there Angular, why isn't there something else, and please let us know. Please show the demand so we know where we are investing our time in the future as well. Now, probably you're interested in seeing this in practice. So obviously, let's actually have a live demo, and let's flip to Ilya's desktop and have a live demo on these controls in the context of SharePoint Framework. So Ilya, take it away.
So thank you, Vesa. So right now we are going to do the demo. The demo is built with a couple of controls. So at the left side, you see the placeholder control, and on the right side, you see my code. So right now, I already use a placeholder control, but let's first go to the documentation part of our controls, and let's go to the home page, because on the home page, we see all the controls. So as Tessa already mentioned, we have two controls, or two types, the property pane ones and the React controls ones. So first of all, the property pane ones, these contain all controls for the property pane. So for configuring your web art, like for instance, the property field list picker allows you to select a list, a single list or multi-list picker. So you can choose that. And we give in the documentation all the guidance on how you need to configure this. So first of all, go to the Getting Started page that mentions how you install everything, how you get a localization file in place, and so on. After that, you can start importing the list picker into your project. This is already done in my project. If you look over here, then you see the same line or code snippet from the documentation part. We have to implement some interfaces or a property in the interface. So we have a list interface, list variable, which is a string or a multi-string, an array of strings. And we have our list picker, and this is what I'm actually going to copy and place into my control. So that right now, if I go to my web art, I'm going to edit, and then I can configure my web art. I don't see anything over here yet. So if I paste this one over here, let's call this list, I can now use list in my property control. So if I'm going to refresh, probably I was a bit too fast. And I'm not doing this on the workbench because I want to show you a really cool control, the web art title, and that needs to be inside the page. Otherwise, I cannot show you the editing experience. So here, web art is reloaded, and we see the new property pane field list picker. So in here, we see a couple of lists. We have other options available in this list picker. For example, we can say that we only want to retrieve base template of the document libraries. So right now we see everything, but we can also say base template, and we give it the base template ID, which is 101 for document libraries. And if we refresh this again, I was get a bit fast. We configure, and now everything is filtered out to only retrieve document libraries. So right now, what I did is I selected my document library, documents, and I retrieved some information. You see that everything switched, so no more placeholder there. Now we have a list view. This list view is actually coming from another control part section. So what we can do more is we can add multiple things in here. So we can add multiple controls, like for instance, re-indent this. We can have a field toggle with callout, which is quite a nice one. This gives you some visual feedback on what you actually have to do or what this property is going to do in your web art. And we have a really cool one, which is the property field term picker, which allows you to pick some terms from your term set.
And really key point there, just when we're refreshing the page and pinpoint, the developer doesn't need to understand where the lists are coming or what's the REST API call against the list or the term sets or whatever. You don't have to worry about that. All of that is taken care of. That's really cool.
Indeed. Indeed. The only thing you have to do is do some configuration. That's all explained inside the documentation part. Like, for instance, limiting by group name. This is a new feature, or limiting by term set. This is up to you. This is what you can configure. If we don't specify these things, we will show everything. But you can also limit these things, and that's the only thing you have to give to the web art to tell what you want to show. So if I comment this out, and I would refresh everything again, I'm going to edit. Now I see my two new controls in here. I see the toggle one with callout, and this is going to give me some information about what is this toggle going to do. So it's going to allow grouping. If I'm going to apply this, it should in the future allow grouping. It's not yet configured. That's something for later. And we can also select terms. And in here, right now, I see all my terms. So you can see my departments. But if I was going to implement this, I'm going to say that I want to limit everything on custom. So I'm only going to retrieve everything coming from my custom group. And then I only want to show departments. So if people want to choose something inside your web part, you as a developer, you can also limit them to a particular scope so that they cannot choose everything, no, only the department's term set. So in this case, I can now say I only want to retrieve documents from IT. I apply it, and right now everything is scoped to IT. Same if I going to unset this. This is done. So let's publish this, and let's move over to the PnP controls component. This PnP control component is partly configured. You see some view fields. You see a group field. And if we go to the bottom, in here, we see what the web part is actually doing. So in here, you see the placeholder, what that would show when the page was in view mode and when the page was in edit mode. And here at the bottom, here is where the magic happens with the list view. So in the list view, we can say, these are the items we want to add. These are my view fields. The view fields define what you want to show. So the icon, the ID, the name, and the created date. And we can also add other things, like for instance, we want to group by fields, and we want to only group by the fields if a particular property grouping is turned on. And if it's turned on, then we want to group by fields. And this is going to specify that we want to group by that term field by the department. So if we are going to reload everything again, modify the page, turn this one on. Now, if everything goes well, we should see grouping. And this is all built in the list view. You don't have to do anything anymore. Everything is...
Well, you have to reference the list view of that.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. You have to reference everything in the control, but you don't have to work with the Office UI Fabric control, yes, because everything is in place for you as a developer. We already did all the plumbing for you.
A super easy way of utilizing these things. So extremely efficient. That's really cool.
There's one more control which I really want to show. That's one more control. This is the documentation part for the React controls, as you can see right here. And there's one really cool one, which is the web art title, which has just been added to this repository. Again, go to the documentation. The only thing I need is this one, but this is the web art title control, which I can add in my control over here. I define description because I don't have a title, and this should be it. When I'm going to reload everything again, there should be a title when I'm in edit mode. Because right now, there shouldn't be any description yet, so you don't see anything changed over here. But when I'm going to edit, I see a web art title, and this web art title is changeable without actually going to open the property pane of this web art. So I can now change this to this. If I'm going to publish it, this is going to show everything what I just filled in. If I refresh it, it's still there. If I'm going to modify it, I'm allowed to modify this again.
And this is how many of the first-party web parts actually has this capability, but it is actually implemented in the first-party web parts. It's not by default in the web part framework of SharePoint Framework, which is slightly weird, but that's fine. So now there's this reusable controls for everybody to take advantage extremely easily, which is super great. That's official term, super great. So.
But it is super great.
Yes.
So that was it for the demo part. So I hope you see the real advantage of using these controls in your solutions. So you don't actually have to write a whole lot of code anymore. You just reuse what we already built. If there are some questions, if there are some new ideas, go to our issue list, which are, if you go to the documentation part, you see the GitHub link in here, and there, go to issues, file them, questions, IDs, pull requests, everything is, we allow everything, so go and contribute.
Absolutely, absolutely. And like mentioned in the intro of the presentation, we're looking into potentially having additional frameworks supported in the future. There's obviously that requires resources, that requires contributions from a community, so we need to think through how that's going to happen. We started with React, but we will keep on evolving this in the future as well. But let's actually flip back on the presentation and close up the webcast. So thank you, Ilya. Cool. So thank you, Ilya, for that demo, and I think it's time to wrap up. So, like mentioned, these are reusable controls, open source, community-driven controls, which we provide from SharePoint Engineering together with community. And what we want to do in the future, mentioned quite a few times as well, we want to harvest our first-party web parts, and we are harvesting our first-party web parts to provide you additional controls. But the key point of everything is you to let us know what you need. So please, please, please give us feedback. Go to our GitHub issue lists of these controls, and we'll have the links in the video notes, and give us feedback what you need. If you have challenges on things, or if you have ideas, or maybe if you want to contribute, let's start that discussion in the GitHub and in the other social media channels, and then figure out together where you can contribute and help and provide feedback. Anything else what we want to say on the summary side? Sorry, Ilya, it's me talking again a lot. So
no problem. So if you have an ID or if you want to contribute, just go to the issue list first, write the issue, and so we can see if there is an interest, if somebody is already working on that part. Otherwise, you're maybe building something which somebody else is also working on, and then there are two of the same pull requests. So then you wasted your time in creating or updating a control. Yep. So first create an issue, then we can review it, and then we can say, okay, go ahead and do your thing.
Yes.
So
that way, if there is a lot of people obviously contributing, we can control who's doing what more efficiently. But in general, please, please, please also let us know what you need. Mentioned quite a few times, but it's super, super important for us so that we know where we are aligning our resources next. And that's really the key here. But thank you, Ilya, for a great demo. Thank you, Ilya, for great work on setting up the initial setup on the controls together with community. We already have had excellent contributions on these reusable controls from an open source community side as well. And we keep on adding these controls more and more in the future. Please test them, let us know, give us feedback, what worked, what doesn't, and let's stay active in the social media. Thank you, Ilya, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.